guys, just Julian here, and I want to make this tutorial and show you guys how to do some really cool reflective text like you would have seen on the candy bucket stamp I made. And I'll try to get a blue snowball mic soon so I can start doing a lot of commentaries and tutorials and all that for you. So this is going to be all in Photoshop tutorial. You won't need anything else besides Photoshop, so let's get stuck into it. So we just want to go and create a new document. I'm just going to do 1920 by 1080 pixels at 300 resolution, which is high definition TV basically. So that's okay. And I've got my canvas here. Just going to double click on the background layer just to unlock that layer. So I'm going to create a new layer here with the new layer button down there. Go to my type tool, just drag out a box over the screen, and I'm going to type whatever I want. So I can just type Julian, which is my name. And a font that looks really good with this technique is Grow Bold. It's the font I used in the candy bucket, and it's the font I'll use now. So usually you want to pick one sort of color, main color, which will be the main fill of your letters. So I think I might choose like a nice aqua sort of color. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then I'll just scale that up a bit, maybe like 72. Yep, looks pretty good size. And then I just adjust my box like that. So once you have your type all ready to go, just right click on your type layer and rasterize it, which makes it into a flattened image where you can edit and do all sorts of things. So we're going to double click on this layer and apply some layer styles. So first we're going to add a stroke, and we're going to make this stroke white. If you want to see how big the stroke is while you're editing it, make it black and then go back and change it to white afterwards. So about 6 pixels looks like a pretty good size for us now. So I'm just going to change it back to white and press OK, and we're going to right click on that layer and rasterize it again. And we're going to double click on that layer once again and then add another stroke, and this time black. And we can make the outline basically whatever you want, size 5 pixels, that seems to look pretty good. And I'm just going to add a little gradient overlay. So just check the gradient overlay button, turn the blend mode to overlay, and then turn down the opacity maybe about 30%, maybe a bit less, let's say 25%. That looks pretty good. And I'm just going to press OK. I'm going to right click and rasterize the layer style one more time. So now it's going to create a new layer, and with our magic wand tool selected, and while selected on our original layer, I'm just going to click the insides of the blue in the text whilst holding shift, so it keeps all the selections. If you don't hold shift, it will only do one selection at a time. So just hold shift and it will select them all, and then click back to your new layer, and we just want to fill it with white. But before we do that, I want to go to our marquee tool, which is the dotted box, right click, then go to select, modify, and then expand. This is optional, but I suggest you expand by 1 pixel, which will just get rid of that little line between the white and then the white you're filling in now. So as you can see, that's seamless, but if you didn't expand that, you probably would have found there would be a little line going around the text. So now it's going to double click on that white layer, and we're going to apply an inner shadow or an inner glow. We'll go change the color to black, the blend mode to normal, and we'll bump up the size just so you think looks good. So 25 pixels or 24 pixels should do that. And it's got to turn the opacity down a little. Probably around 25% opacity would be good. And since we already added a gradient overlay before, we don't really need to add one. But if you do, you can make this, turn the scale down a little bit and then turn the opacity down. And usually turn the scale down to about 30%, 40%, just so there's that line, which you can definitely tell is the white and the grey. I'm going to press OK, and then on that layer we're going to right click and rasterize it again. And then we're going to go to our blend mode here. If you're on a Mac, to scroll through the blend mode, you press Shift plus or minus. On a Windows computer, you can simply click on it and then click on it again, and then which will highlight the box, and then you can press one of the arrow keys or the scroll mouse button. And if we go to the blend mode multiply, we can see it works sort of like overlay, where the darker colors go through and the lighter colors are transparent, so it gives really nice 3D textured look to the type. And once we do this, we can create a new layer again. Go over to our marquee tool whilst holding down the click button and go into the elliptical marquee tool. That's going to draw a big ellipse over the text and just kind of center it, and fitting it about halfway down the text. So we've got a nice curve going through the text. On a new layer, we want to go to our brush tool, make sure white is selected, pressing either bracket key on the keyboard to make the brush smaller or bigger, make sure the hardness is at 0, and simply draw in a little bit of white along the edge of that line that we made. Not too much, just a little bit. And then we're going to hold Control and click on the new layer we made, which gave the shading to the word Julian, which is just around the green. And we'll go to our marquee tool, selected still on that white reflection layer. I'm going to right click on the screen, select inverse and delete. And that simply deletes everything outside of that layer, which is what we want the reflection on. We only want the reflection in the center of the text. And then we can just turn down the opacity a little, basically to what you think looks good. Maybe about 20% usually looks alright. And if you think it still looks a bit too light at the top, you can always rub it out a bit, but that looks pretty good for that. And if you want to go an extra step further, you can do a sort of metallic effect around the white. So selecting back on the Julian layer, I'm going to create a new layer, and then select on Julian layer, or the original text layer. I'm just going to select all the white, still holding shift with my magic wand, selecting all the white around the edges, and then selecting back to the new layer I created. I'm just going to fill that white back in with the paint bucket tool. I'm going to double click on the layer and do gradient overlay. And make sure you remember to fill in the centers, because I just forgot then. So fill the centers of any A's or O's or anything like that. And then once that's done, just go to gradient overlay. And I'm going to turn the scale down, probably about 10-20% is good. Turn down the opacity to about, say, 20-25%. So it gives a nice little gradient. Press OK, right click, Rasterize. I'm going to double click on the layer again, and I'm going to do another gradient overlay. This time you want it reflected, and then reverse, and then turn the angle to 0. And that, as you can see, makes the edges of the text black on each side. And we're just going to turn down the opacity about 30%, maybe a little bit less. As you can see, that just makes edge of the text a little bit grey and a nice reflection in the center, and it gives a sort of metallic effect. And then one more effect is an inner glow. Just going to change the blend mode to normal. Turn the opacity all the way up so I can see what we're doing. And turn down the size just so you can see a small little outline going around the text. So 4 pixels was good enough for me then. Any less you can't really see it anymore, it covers the whole page. So yeah, 4 pixels should be good. I'm going to press OK, right click and then rasterize. From here you can add fabric textures or any sort of other texture if you want. And I suggest if this is to go in front of a background or something, just select all the layers, press Ctrl E to combine them. Double click back on the layer and just add a nice little drop shadow. Change the blend mode to normal, just bump up the size and the distance a little bit. Maybe turn the opacity down a little bit. So that's basically a tutorial on how to make some nice, reflective, clean text in Photoshop. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, please leave a like and a comment, and tell me what other tutorials you'd like to see from me. So thanks heaps for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more. So thank you.
Stars made